Let's begin our PowerPoint tutorial by looking in the Programs folder for PowerPoint. There it is. We can pin it to the Start menu if we like. We can find it a number of different ways, but eventually you'll want to put it on your Start menu so that you can find it quickly. And we'll go ahead and open PowerPoint. First thing I like to do is delete all their defaults. So you'll click and escape to select a whole text box and delete those. Now, let's get an overview of some of the features. So in the Home tab on the ribbon, we see that we have our standard formatting tools for text, but also a bunch of shape options. Insert, the most important things for us are going to be inserting pictures and text boxes as well, as we'll see. If we go to slideshow, we'll notice that we can organize a narration. We'll come back to that. Saving is always important. Save your documents early and often. We'll save this one as a PowerPoint file, but you'll notice that there are other options here as well. Particularly graphical objects, you can export the individual slides as pictures. Design is a useful tab because it allows us to define the slide size. So if we click that, we see that our default is a slide for a widescreen format, but we can customize that. That's particularly important when you're designing a poster. A standard width would be 48 inches and height would be 36 inches, but you can decide yourself what that should be. And it won't really matter for us right now which we choose here. We'll choose to maximize the visibility of our content. And then insert, you see that we can begin inserting text boxes, but first let's go back to our standard size. So let's say on-screen slideshow 10 by 7.5. Okay. Oh yeah, and those two that you can define the layout of your handouts. So those are usually printed as portrait, not landscape, whereas slides are typically landscape. Inserting text boxes is something we'll do frequently. So you'll click and drop a text box and resize it to what you like, and immediately define your fonts. Calibri is the default. We won't talk about how to reset defaults, but I usually select Arial. And for a title of a slide, for a slideshow presentation, those fonts, that title needs to be probably 28-point font. Notice this autocorrect function. You can adjust the autocorrect functions, but you can also undo them with a simple Control-Z. I won't show you how to turn off autocorrect. You can decide whether you want it or not. The key here is that we want to be in a large, clearly readable font. Yes, so we can choose under the View tab, the ruler. That's going to help us organize all of our and align all of our objects. There are other ways that you can use as well. Grid lines and guides. I typically just use the ruler, and I try to center my titles near the center of the page and the top of the page. And you can adjust with the arrow buttons as well as dragging with the mouse. Back to insert, we'll pop another text box here. We can resize it to our heart's content. Again, we'll choose Arial. And for the text, the internal text of a slide, this often will need to be 18 to 20 or 24, but certainly once you drop below 18-point font, you start to lose readability by your audience. We can double click inside the text box to select, click and drag to choose a word or part of the text, or you can drag to select the whole thing. Define your fonts. Again, making your own choices. or you can click and escape to have the whole text box selected and define the text, define everything in the text box a particular way. As with Word, we can choose what kind of alignment we want. Right alignment, centered alignment, justified. But here's some other rules. So please be consistent with your use of fonts. Please be consistent with your formatting choices. When are you choosing to make something italics? When are you choosing to make something bold? When are you choosing to capitalize? Is there a reason you decided to capitalize the first letters? It's not a sentence, so why should it be capitalized? You get to decide. We can create bullets also from that home formatting paragraph set of options. And here's where the ruler comes in handy again. We can select all of our text and define where the bullet position is, as well as how far the text is indented from the bullet. So you get to make that decision yourself. I like center justified text, but that's really a personal preference. So I'll move that text box out of the way. How can we be consistent? Yes, let's format that shape. Okay, so notice that we can, when we format a particular shape, this case a text box, we can choose an interior color if we like. We can also draw a line around that box if we like. Again, we decide whether we want a line around the box, we decide what color the line is, we decide what the weight of the line is. None of those are PowerPoint's defaults. Now we can also, okay. For now, we'll just go back to a clear background. And let's insert a shape. So we can choose a shape from our home drawing menu. And I chose a rounded cornered box. And you see there's a slider that determines the sharpness of the curvature at the corners. The default is blue, so let's, oh yes, a way of being consistent is to copy and paste objects. If you like that box, instead of having to recreate it again, copy it and paste it and use it over and over. Now, you have various objects on your slide. You have to decide who's going to be in front. It's very easy in your format menu to choose who goes to the front and who goes to the back. It can also be very useful to group objects so that when you're reformatting a poster or a slide, you don't have to move individual components around. We can insert a text box into a shape. That can be useful. But the text box is now linked or pinned to that shape, and you're constrained in terms of what you can do with that text and how you can position that text in the shape. So that can be a pain or useful. I suggest deciding which way you want to go, but usually I will make a text box outside of a shape. I'll drop a text box somewhere else outside that shape and then move it into the text box and place it where I want it to be. Again, you can copy and paste text boxes, and what this does is help you maintain consistency. Now you have to be aware in this case that we're in 28-point font. That's too big. Let's lower the font size back to what our other text box was. I believe 18. I've copied and pasted that text just to fill out a paragraph of text here. And I can center that however I like inside the text, inside the shape. Now if I hold down the Shift key, I can select both of those objects, the shape and the text box, and group them together so that they're one unit that moves around the slide together. Again, you make choices about the filling, all of the aspects of your slide. So what color was the default versus what color do you want? Do you want a line? Should it be blue? How thick should it be? Etc. And now that we have that background that we like, we changed it, we can get rid of the other one and select that one. Copy it, right-click, copy, and paste if you don't want to use the keyboard shortcuts. So again, the key here is reusing already formatted objects. That's going to simplify, especially for poster making, it's going to simplify your life. We want that text box now to be on top of the object. So we'll send the shape to the back, and now we can reposition and resize our text so that it fits properly inside. And I want you to notice too that when you reposition text boxes, you will see some automatic guides appear for you on the page so that you understand exactly how one object aligns with another. Often inside a body of text, you'll want a title or a subtitle. You'll usually want to set that apart. Just like with Word, you can choose bold, italic, underline. You have a set of predefined options. And of course, you can always make more slides by going to the Insert menu and dropping new slides in. But let's turn to posters for a while. Posters have different rules. Different maximum and minimum font sizes. Most important. Title fonts need to be big, at least 72 point. But remember here, our ruler says we're only on an 8.5 by 11 page, so we need to increase the size of this thing. Remember how we do that. Design, slide size, customize, and we will create a 48-inch wide by 36-inch high poster. And you see that all of the text and the objects that were there rescale. Notice the ruler shows us the size of this poster now. We know that we're in a big poster format. So we need to go back and readjust. Don't use templates, by the way. Make your own templates. You make your decisions. Don't let other people make your decisions for how you're telling your story. So I'm changing the title here to reflect about a 72 point font size for the title. And you can resize your text boxes. You should resize them to logical dimensions so that it makes it easier to recenter those objects correctly. Don't make them too big or too small. Make them fit the text that you've created. Right, authors and affiliations usually come underneath your title. You can make those a little smaller. So I'll select that second line. Yes, we want to center, of course. That is another one of our formatting tools. Select that second line. Drop the font size down to 66 or whatever you decide. Did you decide to capitalize or did PowerPoint decide? Please make your own choices about how you tell your story. Right, so again with font sizes, text within a particular element of your poster, the actual text of the poster should be no less than about 25 point. This ensures that someone standing in front of your poster is going to be able to read it easily. What happens when we make that change to 25 point? Again, you can select the text or you automatically to, so now it becomes invisible at this scale. So what do we have to do? We have to use the slider at the bottom right, or you can click on the percent value and enter a specific number. Very useful to zoom into something very close to 100%. That is to say, what the poster will actually be printed at, the scale at which it will be printed. And we can slide around to find our text that we're working on. So make choices about how your little subtitles will look. They might be a little bit bigger. You might choose to bold or underline them. You make that call, but be consistent throughout the poster with formatting. Zoom in and out to make the working easy. Another sort of Blake rule of thumb for posters is to keep the text to a minimum, 800 to 1,000 words. More than that, and people tune out. A poster is a narrative, a story. Try to tell the story using the graphical objects that you create. Tables, charts, pictures. Speaking of pictures, go to the Insert menu on the ribbon and find an image to insert. And I've placed one in my Kim 305 poster. Happens to be a Milky Way montage I collected in Utah. And we'll drop that in, and we can, doesn't matter where we place it now, but you can again see those automatic guides appear as you decide where to place an object. And the first thing we do when we drop an image in is to make sure we've chosen something that's at the high enough resolution. So we jump to 100%. That's what the viewer will see, and we see no pixelation. Pixelation in the image that you've chosen, delete it and try again. Sometimes you'll want to have a legend. Oh, see, I dropped a text box into a shape. That's no good. Let's bounce out, drop the text box outside the shape, and then start creating a title for the image that we inserted a moment ago. Then, once we've got that text, we can size it the way we like, 24 point, nothing less. Align it with our image the way we want to. It is a very nice image, by the way. And then we can group objects. Again, this is going to make reorganizing your poster easy. So get stuff down, group things the way they should be grouped, and then worry about placement later. We can also choose a shape and drop a shape behind an image or a chart or a table. This can make it stand out a little bit more clearly. We have to choose our formatting again. Those are your calls. So we right click, format shape, and then we right click and send backward. Now if you send to the back, once you have a set of stacked shapes, it can be a bit of a mess. So you want to work on organizing them. And then to select multiple objects, you just hold down the Shift key and select as you go. And here we've selected 3 objects that we will group together now, and they all move together. So if I decide this figure needs to be moved to another location, I can do that. Again, try not to pin your text boxes to your shapes. It's a pain. It takes away your freedom. So, general rules. Plan. How many sections are you going to create? probably not two gigantic ones. Think about what you're going to need and create them. How are you going to make sure they're uniform? Remember, format one, copy, and paste those to new places on the poster. Are you going to save room for references or acknowledgments? Again, that's another section of the poster. So let's think about how we'll do that. We can select the shape that we drew. And copy and paste it. So I pasted a new one in there. And now I'm going to resize the new one and the original shape. And recognize that when I did that, I have to go back to the slider to choose how rounded the shapes are so that they match. So now I have a little acknowledgement section at the end of my poster, for example. But this again is how you would create multiple sections on a poster for whatever they might happen to be. Yes, always make your text boxes outside the shapes and then adjust them to the shape size. Be consistent with font choices, font formatting, and font sizes. Always at the end, go back in and check for pixelation. This is a really common problem when students copy graphics from the internet. We can talk about how you choose those objects should you be forced to use somebody else's graphics. If you do use someone else's graphics, be sure to source that material. This is my property, so we could source it that way. I have a core of a poster here now. Oh yeah, I'll mention as well that we could use this as a, should we be back in a slideshow, we could go to our slides and rehearse timings. So under the slideshow tab of the ribbon, you can choose rehearse timings and start your slideshow. Oops. Click rehearse timing, start the slideshow, and you'll see that for a particular slide, it's giving you a countdown of how long you've been on that slide. We don't want to do that today. The main reason I'm telling you this is that it's useful to record timings, but when you actually go to give a presentation, be sure to turn those timers off. Suddenly your slides will be changing without out of your control. So practice, but then turn your rehearse timings off. All right, so again, save early and often. Make rational choices about the locations and the names of the files that you save as. Putting all this back in week 3 of my Chem 305 folder and give it a name that makes sense. Again, no versioning in PowerPoint. You have to save files in such a way as you don't lose other data that you wanted to retain. We can also save files. So File tab, Save As. We'll save this to that same folder, but now we're going to make a choice. Save as type, not just a PowerPoint, but a PDF. Frequently, you'll share posters or print posters from PDFs, and so it's very important to understand how to do that. The best thing you can do is go to that PDF that you just generated and what? Zoom in to full scale. Look at the whole thing. Does it look reasonable? But then go to 100% to make sure everything you did in PowerPoint is retained in that PDF document. Sometimes things get messed up and you do not want to be caught out after printing, realizing that an image was ruined in the transfer.